Welcome everybody. Today I have an unusual lesson. It's an important lesson. It's so important. It's Christmas break 2024 and I'm excited to take some time just to think about this upcoming new year and how I want to improve my class. And first of all, I want you all to know that you are amazing. You're incredible. You're awesome. And I really believe in you. And if you are given this opportunity to teach seminary, that says a whole lot about you and how incredible of a person you truly are. And I want to thank you for being here today. So this is actually going to be my day 2 lesson, but I want to talk to you about boundaries and why boundaries are so important in a seminary classroom. And then I'm going to go into my day 2 lesson and how I will be implementing some boundaries and clarifying some boundaries for my students so I can eliminate some problems right from the get-go. That's what I want to do, is I want to eliminate some problems from the get-go just by setting up some healthy boundaries. Now, why did I decide to talk to you about boundaries? I've observed a lot of young teachers the last 8 to 10 years. And after observing so many teachers and I kind of asking and looking for the breakdowns as the semester goes on, right? Classes start out good and then there's these breakdowns as the semester goes on. And that is a natural process. And I think what I see as a problem is the lack of boundaries in young teachers. Young teachers really struggle with boundaries. And I want you to know, I have too. So this isn't just a lesson for you. This is like every semester I'm like, okay, I'm going to work on this. And I didn't have the word for it in the past. I like the word boundaries because it helps to get a clearer picture of what we're talking about. So let's just start off. Like, do you have a home? Yes. Do you have a door on the front? Do you have a lock on that door? Yeah. Then you have boundaries, right? Do you have a fence in your backyard? Like, how many love the neighborhood dog with no boundaries, right? We hate that, right? Build a fence, keep your dog in your backyard. We don't like the dog running all over the neighborhood. Boundaries are a good, healthy thing. Some people have boundaries for their home that says, hey, shoes off when you come inside. Cool. I've never had a problem with that. Do you allow smoking in your home, right? Those are all boundaries. And when people know the boundaries, they usually comply with the boundaries. On an airplane, there's all kinds of boundaries like no guns, no weapons, no knives. There's no liquids over 3 ounces. And they have this whole screening process to make sure you respect their boundaries. There's no smoking on the plane. When we take off, you have to be wearing a seatbelt. All these boundaries. I'm going to read some quotes, and I just want you to think about your own boundaries. And if you have some concerns about boundaries, I've gathered some quotes and some resources just to talk about it and to hopefully help get you thinking about what boundaries are you going to set in your classroom. So, boundary setting can help people function without stepping on others' toes so that a healthy mutual understanding may develop and as a result relationships may flourish. That's what we want in our seminary class, is flourishing relationships, and boundaries can help those relationships. People fear what others might think of them if they set boundaries. We might predict that others will think of us as being rude or self-centered. But not setting proper boundaries can leave us feeling stressed, unappreciated, and resentful. And I highlighted this because this is what I see in a lot of teachers. They start to feel stressed, unappreciated, and then resentment grows. When our boundaries are beginning to be pushed on, but yet we never set boundaries in the first place. For example, is there a boundary of homework in your classroom, right? And sometimes it's like, I asked them to put their homework away and they never put their homework away. It would be a lot easier from day one if we set the boundary that, hey, we're not going to let homework be done in this class. I'll talk about I'm going to do that later on. But we could deal with it every day, or we could just deal with it up front and then enforce and keep that boundary. and solve a lot of problems from day one. And that's why this is my day 2 lesson. Boundaries. Without establishing healthy boundaries, you may allow others to treat you in ways that are hurtful or unhealthy for you, which may lead to greater problems within the relationship, lower self-esteem, or feeling mentally, emotionally, and financially burdened. You may neglect yourself in favor of meeting the needs of the other person, or suppress your emotions in order to avoid conflict out of fear of damaging the relationship. Conversely, setting boundaries enables us to take proactive steps to protect our mental, physical, and emotional health. This in turn allows us to be better friends, partners, coworkers, and family members. I just love this phrase. Setting boundaries enables us to take proactive steps. That's what we want to do. Take proactive steps, day 1, day 2, to protect our mental, physical, and emotional health. I'm like, wow. With a seminary teacher with no boundaries, all of this starts to take a toll. Because our students are starting to do things that really get under our skin and really bother us. And they're not paying attention and they're not participating. But it might be because we never set up any boundaries. Boundaries can help us create safe, healthy environments for relationships in which closeness and connection can flourish and the needs of each person are heard and respected. Why setting boundaries is important. I just Googled this and this came up. Setting boundaries is important because it allows you to protect your mental and emotional well-being by clearly defining what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior in your relationship, enabling you to prioritize your needs, manage stress, and foster healthier connections with others by expressing your limits and expectations clearly. Relationship quality. Clear boundaries help prevent resentment and misunderstandings in relationships, leading to stronger connections with others. Improve mental health. By asserting your need and saying no when necessary, you can reduce stress and improve your overall mental well-being. In the past, when my boundaries were less clear, it really started to play with my mental health when my classes were doing things that I didn't want in my classroom. And so let's clarify up front and then create a wall or a fence so that we can, protect our boundaries. From Melissa Urban's book, The Book of Boundaries. You're not being mean when you set boundaries. You're being kind to yourself and your relationships. But that doesn't mean they're not uncomfortable. Setting boundaries can be uncomfortable because when we set a boundary, we're expressing a limit that hasn't yet been established. I feel like this is the number one reason why young teachers don't set boundaries, is because they are uncomfortable, and we don't like uncomfortable. But we need to get uncomfortable so that we can get more comfortable. In a class where there's boundaries, the students get more comfortable so we can have more powerful experiences. Melissa continues, my research shows that the main reason people don't set boundaries where they need them is that it's so uncomfortable. I won't try to pretend otherwise. I feel it too. Speaking up in the moment, advocating for yourself, and asking for what you need is uncomfortable. But what's both uncomfortable and damaging is reaffirming the story that someone else's feelings are more important or worthy than your own, which is what you do every time you swallow your healthy boundary in an effort to keep peace. This is what seminary teachers do. A lot of seminary teachers will swallow your healthy boundary in an effort to keep peace. Well, what that does is that leads to further boundary breaking. more things that inhibit the learning and the growth experience of seminary. The truth is, when someone oversteps your limits, there is no comfortable solution. But one path is paved with short-term discomfort that leads to major long-term improvements in your health and happiness. And the other path is just an endless circle that leaves you feeling unworthy, anxious, angry, and resentful. Several quotes from the book of Boundaries. It is important to communicate your boundaries clearly and assertively, And that's what I want to do on day 2. Boundaries help us create healthy and balanced relationships. Boundaries allow us to protect our time, energy, and resources. Healthy boundaries are necessary for building strong and fulfilling relationships. And let's just put this in there. Healthy boundaries are necessary for building strong and fulfilling seminary classes. Boundaries help us avoid burnout and overwhelm. Respecting your boundaries sets a powerful example for others to do the same. Boundaries are essential for maintaining a sense of peace and balance in our lives. You are not responsible for how others react to your boundaries, only for setting and maintaining them. Boundaries are a form of self-care, not selfishness. It is okay to say no to things that do not serve your well-being. Boundaries are essential for protecting our physical, emotional, and mental health. Boundaries are an act of self-love. Setting boundaries is not about controlling others, but about respecting yourself. When we have clear boundaries, we are more able to love and give freely without resentment or depletion. Guilt is not a good reason to say yes. Learning to say no is a key to personal freedom. Saying yes to everything leaves you depleted and resentful, which ultimately hurts your relationships. People respect your yes more if they know you are capable of saying no. A person who always says yes is often taken for granted. A few more. Fear of disappointing others. Many people fear that saying no will make them look selfish, mean, or unhelpful. The book emphasizes that saying no is a form of self-respect and allows you to be a more genuine person in relationships. Guilt. Feeling guilty about saying no is a common obstacle. The book teaches that guilt is often a signal that you are violating your own boundaries, not that you are doing something wrong. Fear of conflict. Some people avoid saying no to avoid confrontation. Boundaries encourages people to face conflict and to communicate assertively and kindly while holding firm to their limits. Confusion and expectations. Sometimes we aren't clear about our own expectations or the expectations of others. The book encourages you to clarify these expectations, allowing you to make better choices. Practical tips for saying no. Be clear and direct. Use simple and straightforward language. Avoid over-explaining or making excuses. Something like, "Thank you for asking, but I'm not able to do that," can be effective. Don't apologize unnecessarily. You don't need to apologize for having boundaries. You can be kind and respectful while still saying no. Buy yourself time. If you're unsure, don't feel pressured to say yes immediately. You can say, "Let me think about it and get back to you." Give yourself time to consider your response. Offer alternatives if appropriate. Sometimes it's helpful to suggest an alternative. For example, if a student comes to class and says, "Can I do homework in class? It's really important today." This would be my alternative. "I'm sorry, we don't do homework in here. But if your mom can call the secretary and excuse it, you can do the homework in the hallway." Right? I'm respecting my boundary. But if it's so important for you that you do this today, if your parent excuses it, you can go in the hallway and do that homework. And I would never allow it again for the same person. Just saying, "Sorry, that's just not acceptable. We're not getting the habit of doing this every day." Be consistent. Once you've established a boundary, stick to it. This shows others that you are serious about your limits. Focus on your values. Ground your decision in your values and priorities. This makes it easier to say no to things that don't align with what's most important to you. We have to have boundaries. I would add one other thing. There's no need to lecture. Just say nope and move on. Don't lecture. These quotes on boundaries were for you as a teacher, not your students. And so they're not for you to share with the class. They were just for you as a teacher, hopefully so that you get committed to this idea that I need boundaries. So let's talk about day 2 lesson and how I'm going to set up some boundaries. First of all, my students are going to come in. They're going to see the seating chart up. And my seating chart has student questions next to it. And I'll explain why. in a little bit. I started off class on day 2 with this story. Hall of Fame basketball player Bill Walton, Hall of Fame coach John Wooden. John Wooden was voted by ESPN as the coach of the century for the 1900s. He won 11 championships in like 13 years at UCLA. Hall of Fame basketball player Bill Walton shows up to the first day of practice. First day of practice, John Wooden says, "Okay, everybody, take off your shoes." And all the players took off their shoes, and they're in the middle of the court, and he says, "I want you to take off your socks." And so they take off their shoes and socks, and then he says, "I'm going to teach you how to put your shoes and socks on and how to tie your shoes properly so that you don't get any blisters and your shoe doesn't come untied in the middle of a game." And so he walked them through the very basics. Today's lesson is going to talk about some basics that might be given in a classroom setting, but we're going to use them as tools to help us structure our class. One thing that made John Wooden so successful as a coach is his attention to detail, the smallest little details. He taught his players how to tie their shoes, for example, so that they did not come undone in the middle of the game. Why? Because he said, if his shoe comes undone, then you're going to be thinking about that shoe 10% and not the ball. I want you to be focusing on the ball the whole game. I don't want your shoe to come untied. You focus less. A guy scores a basket. We lose the game by 1 point. And so his attention to detail. Here's one of my attentions to detail. This is like tying shoes. And I will explain this to my students. When you come into class, backpacks in the back. All books, all electronics, all makeup, all schoolwork, all homework, all hobbies, all toys, all games, etc. In the backpack, in the back. We don't want any of that at our desk. So what am I doing here? I'm creating a boundary. And this boundary is absolutely essential to eliminate distractions in your seminary class. I don't want to be giving a lesson to a student who's reading Harry Potter. I don't want to be giving a lesson to a student who's playing a video game. And so I'm setting the boundary up front. All this stuff goes in your backpack and it stays in the back of the class. Now, one way I enforce the backpack thing is I stand at the door and I greet my students one by one. I try to look in their eyes and I greet them and I say backpack in the back, and I'm just always encouraging this behavior. And if I see it out, I'm sorry, that goes in the backpack. If I see somebody slip in with a Harry Potter on a desk, I'm sorry, that goes in the backpack. Got homework? Sorry, that goes in the backpack. If they're like, I gotta do homework, please, I'm not allowing you to do homework in my class. No. Now, if it's that important to you, you can have a mom call the secretary and get permission for one time to do it in the hallway. And when you're done, come back in. But no, we are not doing that in class. Right? It just has to be clear, upfront boundary. Now, if you're in a building where you have to hurry up and set up, you might consider locking the door until you get everything set up, and then open the door and greet students one by one so that you can enforce this backpack thing. And it's not really a big thing, it's just a quick memo, Hey, great to see you, backpack in the back. And after, a day or two, they don't need those reminders, but when you see things, that goes in the backpack in the back. Boom. This is a no negativity, no criticism, no gossip, no name calling, no rude, even in joking, safe zone. This is a safe zone. Welcome to a class where you are safe. Now, you're going to be asked to do some things that push your comfort boundaries, but we're safe from criticism and negativity. Now, in my class, I do not use sarcasm. I am almost 100% clean of sarcasm in my seminary class. It sometimes comes out, but in the early days of my class, I used much more sarcasm. And the impact was overwhelmingly negative, and it came back to bite me. And so I decided years ago to get rid of sarcasm. Sometimes it comes out and I try to catch myself. I just want to suggest and encourage you, if you are a sarcastic person, work on it now before it comes back to bite you. It will come back to bite you. That is a sarcasm-free place. This is a place where we're not going to tease people, joke in negative ways, and be a gossiper, a critical person saying rude things. And my boundary is this: if somebody says something that is just horribly rude, I just stop. I'm sorry. We do not say stuff like that in this class. That is your warning. If it happens again, I say, I'm sorry, Tom. I cannot have you say stuff like that in this class. I need you to go out in the hall and come back when you're ready to apologize. And take some time and step out in the hallway. Get a drink of water. We are not having that here in this class. It's just a very calm, but the message is sent and it's strong. And after class, say, please apologize to me. Please apologize to the other person. And we are setting clear boundaries. Clear boundaries. We're going to introduce Moroni 6 through 5. I want students to read this quote. I'll say, read this to your neighbor, answer the questions, and let me read it to you. The church did meet together oft to fast and to pray and to speak one with another concerning the welfare of their souls. So, besides fast and pray, what are we supposed to do when we meet together, as mentioned in this verse? And that is speak one with another concerning the welfare of their souls. I underline this. I'm trying to make it very clear. I usually don't direct the learning this direct, but this is just one point I want them to understand. What does that look like in class to talk concerning the welfare of their souls? What do you think that means? How does one do that? Why is this important in a class like this? And then I'll say, okay, talk with your neighbor. I'll walk around and say, hey, could you share that with the class? Could you share that with the class? Could you share that with the class? Bring everybody's attention to the front. Okay, Tom, would you share? What do you think that looks like? Why is that important? Here's what I'm teaching my students to do. In so many classes, this is what I see. Kids walk in. I walk in the classrooms. They're sitting down with a cell phone, ignoring people sitting right next to them. I don't want that in my class. Why? Because we're supposed to minister to each other. We're supposed to talk to each other. We're supposed to actually care about people. I eliminate the cell phone the moment they walk in the door. And that helps to set that boundary. So many teachers I see, they're like, okay, class is going to start. Put your cell phone away. We've already lost the cell phone battle at that moment because they're already hooked into something. Their mind is running with something. And now we have to take them off of that. Their mind isn't going to want to do that. So do the cell phone right here, right, with the backpack. And then come back to this. What are we going to do when we come into class and you sit down and we're just waiting for the rest of class to come? We're going to talk to each other. We're going to care for each other. Now, I'm going to introduce the bell again. I introduced that day one. What does the bell mean? Stop, eyes up front, be ready for instruction. And this bell is just one tap of the bell. One tap of the bell. And then we stand and we listen, and this is the mantra. I talk when no one else is talking. I talk when no one else is talking. And you just wait. And that mindset sends a boundary message. So I'm introducing the bell again. I'm retraining these things, day 2, because it must be something that you don't just do these things once. You take a little bit of time every day for the first few weeks to hit over these things. So since our policy is when we come into class, we're going to talk to people, I want you to turn to your neighbor and ask this question. What went well yesterday? Toughest part of your day? And what was a small victory yesterday? Okay, and I'm going to give them a minute, and we're going to practice the bell. In the middle, I'll hit the bell. I'll have them turn to the front. I stand there and wait at attention. And then I compliment them. Wow, that was fantastic. Great job. You did fantastic. Back to your questions. Listen for the bell. And then they go back talking to each other. And so in my class, this is why I have questions on my seating. I'll have the seating chart with questions. These questions are what you ask your neighbor when you come into class, and we're waiting for other people to come. We talk to each other. Why? Because we want to show each other that we genuinely care about each other, and each is important. So let's talk cell phones. I'll just take a few minutes to explain why we aren't doing cell phones, generally speaking, in my class. Occasionally, I will ask you to use cell phones, but why mostly the boundary is we're not using cell phones in our class. Amy Antonelli, she is a heroic person. I really look up to her and admire her. She said, I spent years at Apple and Facebook trying to get people to look down at their phones. Honestly, all I want to do now is get people to look up. If I could do anything today, it would be to get people off their phones and look to God and to budget the headspace for Him to be able to actually talk to you. Find the headspace to really think about who you are, who you want to become, and whether your current trajectory is consistent with what you want to become. So Amy spent years working for Apple and Facebook, and she left when she felt unsatisfied with how her work was impacting society and became a CEO of HXP, a humanitarian organization for teens, which is phenomenal. And as part of HXP, she has while they're on the trip, students are banned from using their cell phones, and they literally collect their cell phones at the beginning of the trip and hand them back at the end of the trip. And I've been on these trips, and they're incredible. And one of the reasons why they're so successful is because they take cell phones away from students. But I love this idea of let's give headspace to God. Let's look up to God. And let's budget the time for Him to actually talk to us. And that was what we're going to do in seminary. Strength of Youth Guide says this: be careful that your use of technology and media does not replace spending in-person time with family and friends. I see this all the time in classes where people are glued to technology, ignoring people sitting right next to them, and not having time with this person next to them because of a device. And I want to create an atmosphere that the person next to them is more important than the device. The only way to do that is to eliminate the device. Let me say that again. The only way to do that is to eliminate the device. Strength of Youth continues. Social media and other technology can take much of your time without giving a lot of value in return. Take a break from the virtual world and connect with people in real life. And we are going to do that in seminary. Cell phone detox. Now I'm going to have students read this quote on the study sheet. And the study sheet and the PowerPoint is in the show notes. Cell phone detox. Why? And I'll say, read this silently, mark the phrases that are meaningful, be ready to share with a neighbor. So I'll give them 1 minute. That's all it takes. 1 minute, read this quote. Too many allow themselves to almost live online with their smart devices, screens illuminating their faces day and night, earbuds in their ears, blocking out the still small voice of the Spirit. If we do not find time to unplug, we may miss opportunities to hear the voice of Him who said, be still and know that I am God. Okay, and so they're going to read this quietly by themselves. They're going to mark, and then I say, turn to your neighbor and share something that you marked. Here's our cell phone boundaries. Cell phones will not be at your desk during class. They will not be in your pocket. They will be in the back. I'm sorry. That's what it takes to break free from the cell phone for an hour, is it needs to be in the backpack. Research shows that if the cell phone is buzzing in their pocket, they will not be able to focus. And so I have this in your backpack. They will be left in the bags in the back unless there are medical reasons, such as diabetes or something similar where you have a monitoring device. If you don't have a bag, you'll put it in the back shelf. Why? Because we want this to be a place we can connect with the Savior. So these are some hand signals I use in my class. And this might seem like an extreme boundary, but these boundaries eliminate some problems and distractions and disruptions. I'll explain more in a minute. This may seem like a little bit of extreme, but it's really, really helpful. So, normal raised hand, I would like to speak. 2 fingers, I'd like to leave my seat. 3 fingers, I need your help. Thumbs up, I need to use the restroom. Just think of all the things that this eliminates. There are certain classes at the end of the day where people start getting up out of their seat all the time. And it creates distractions. Tom gets up to go throw something away. Sammy gets something out of his backpack. They end up having a whole conversation in the back of the class, interrupting and distracting. So what I like to do is train them, like, I would like you please not to leave your seat without giving me the signal. And when you give me the signal, I will simply nod or point to you. 3 fingers is very simple because now I know I just need to walk over to them and help them with whatever is on their mind or clarifications for instructions. And thumbs up, I need to use the bathroom. Again, in the middle of a conversation, don't raise your hand and ask me if you could use the bathroom. Simply put your thumb up and I will then point to you or nod to you. Now, this is very helpful because if you don't clarify this, then you'll have students stand up and walk completely out of your classroom and you have no idea what they are doing or why they left. Complete distraction. This is like tying shoes. Let's just solve this problem by having a thumbs up. The other thing that happens is if you don't have a bathroom signal, you'll get a kid raise their hand, and you might be in the middle of the most spiritual moment of the class. A kid raises his hand and says, and you're like pointing to them, and they're like, yeah, can I go to the bathroom? And kids start laughing, and it causes an interruption to a spiritual moment. These 4 little signals will eliminate little tiny distractions that come up in a class, especially in release time seminary at the end of the day. If you have an end of the day class, these are essential because bathroom problems at the end of the day after lunch, you'll have 5 kids that need to go to the bathroom. And those interruptions of hands going up saying, I got to go to the bathroom is so distracting. You'll have kids getting out of their seat 4 or 5 times a period. And it becomes so distracting with an active class at the end of the day. These little things can be so helpful. The other thing is that I like to do is I need to use the bathroom, right? Thumb goes up. And I only like one person to go at a time. And so Sally raises her thumb. I say, yes. I'll just point to her in the middle of a conversation. Nobody needs to know. I just point to her. And maybe 30 seconds go by and somebody else raises their thumb and I say, when Sally comes back, or, when Sally comes back, you can go. It just helps control the situation and set healthy boundaries. All these just play out to creating a place of order, especially when you have 30 students and sometimes very active students. These little things really help. So some procedures I walk through with my class is, okay, when you come on time to class, we drop our backpack in the back, put all our distractions in the backpack, and I have my study page and a pen, a set of pens or pencils or highlighters at the front of the class on like a piano bench or something like that. And so you come in on time, you put your backpack down, you come over here, you grab a pen, you grab your study sheet. And the reason I have the study sheet there is because it allows me to save time from having to pass out papers. And so grab your study sheet, come to your desk, and turn to a neighbor and ask them the questions on the board. Now, what do we do when we're tardy? Now, what I do for this is I actually model coming in tardy. And I say, let me model a bad example. And what I do for a bad example is I will slam the door open, say, oh my goodness, I can't believe it is so crowded out there. It made me tardy. I make a real big scene. I say, what's wrong with this example? Well, you interrupted everything, right? Okay, let me now show you a perfect example. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to quietly open that door, quietly put my backpack down, quietly go to my seat as if to interrupt nobody. and say, okay, what did I do differently that time that made it better? And let them point those things out. This is one of those things that you're going to have to remind your kids on, is how to come in tardy and to just do little touch-ups on reminders on these things over the first few weeks. Sitting in an assigned seat, everybody sits in their assigned seat until I move you, because sometimes I'll move and pair up students. I always have students with a partner, and I will pair them up so that they can work together. I always start in partners, so if I have students absent, I make a note of the absent student, and then I will pair students up together. Or make groups of 3 if I have an odd number that day. And I say this, if you are not happy with your seat, come talk to me in private. Give me the 3 finger, I need to talk, I need help, and then whisper to me, can I talk to you in the back? Can I talk to you out in the hall? I don't want to sit by this person because, or I need to sit by this person because. If you are not happy with your seating chart and there's a legit reason, let's talk and I will fix it. And I will fix it in a respectful, peaceful way. Do not say, when are we going to sit by friends? Because you're sending a message that these people aren't your friends. You're sending the message the person you're sitting next to right now is not a friend. So please talk to me in private. Do not say, when are we going to sit by friends? There will be multiple seating chart changes, and you will move on a regular, consistent base in class. A seating chart is just a starting place. We will talk about the Lord's class setup. Again, the study page is in the show notes. In late 1832, the Lord instructed Joseph Smith on how to set up the School of the Prophets in D&C 88-127. We will seek to follow these instructions for our class setup. Read each phrase and write it in your own words. Now, I always model, and so I have this on a screen and pull up the screen and model on a whiteboard. You might be able to figure something else. If you don't have a whiteboard, you can maybe show them your study page. And it's helpful if your study page is already filled out so you can show students what you're looking for. But here's the first one. Appoint among yourselves a teacher. And I wrote, we have a teacher. Okay. And let not all be spokesmen of one. I'm going to write here, don't all talk at the same time. And then I'm going to say, okay, now with your teammate, you read these phrases and mark what you like, and then rewrite it in your own words in the box next to it. Okay, go. Okay, so here's like an example. I could use this slide to model this and do it on the board. And then, okay, what does this class look like? Who is doing the talking? How is this different from a teacher-guided lecture? What is the intended result? And the intended result right there is that every man has a privilege so that we are all edified. Okay, so there's just some questions to talk about there. And then let's just go on to high-five your neighbor. Tell them one of these compliments, and we are going to move up a seat. And when you get to your new seat, say, hi, my name is Tom. What's your name? What was the best part of your day? So I will rotate students and ask your new neighbor, hi, my name is Tom. What is your name? What was the best part of your day yesterday? And so we're coming up with some kind of rotation. If yesterday I had students on the right move up, today I might say, okay, students on the left move up, and just do it a little different and come up with some sort of rotation, whatever your seating chart is. I have rotations quite a bit, and the reason why is so they get a chance to work with different people, because some people are really strong and they can learn a lot from, and some people are offering very little, and so it will be draining on a person who really wants to bring something to the game to be working with somebody who brings very little. And so I like to rotate out of that situation so that multiple people can experience working with really high achieving students and see their work. I have a little video here, and this is my pre-video questions. Note what these students did in class and results when the students acted. And in this video, it's a great video about how students act and their experience when they're asked to act in the class. And so after the video, I'm going to ask them those questions, and they share with their teammate. Then after that, we're going to high five, give your neighbor a compliment, rotate. Here now is a different question for your neighbor. And now we're going to do the next box with our new neighbor. And the next box is evidence the Spirit joined our class. And what we're going to look for in D&C 50 is the evidences that the Lord says we'll have when we invite the Spirit into our classes. And so I will model this by saying, okay, you're going to read this, and I'll read the first one, and then I'll circle the results, and then I'll write in the box. And so circle the results and write in this box. So be made strong, so we'll get made stronger. We'll understand one another, understand each other, write that down. After they rotate, now we're going to go to the next learning activity, section 50, where we see the evidence the Spirit joined our class. And so we're going to read each verse. We're going to circle the results that are evident in the verse of the Spirit, and then write in the box, in your own words, the evidence of the Spirit. So read this verse, and I'll model this, and I'll circle be made strong, and I'm going to write over here be made stronger, and I'll say, class, write that down. You will be made stronger. I'll do the next one, wherefore he that preaches and he that receiveth understand one another. And I'll say, write this in the box, and say, okay, finish this, the next 4 with your teammates. And then I'll say, okay, what did you put? These are important, so I might have a class discussion about these. Okay, high five your teammate, let's rotate. Tell your neighbor your name and ask them this. Tell me about your classes. When this, I just give them about a minute. Okay, and so now what I'm going to have them do is when they get their new teammate, they're going to give their neighbor their paper, and you're going to read through what your teammate wrote, if they have time. If they don't, we'll go to the next one, which is this. When have you felt the impact from one of the promised blessings of the Holy Spirit in your life? And they're going to write this, and then they're going to share that with their neighbor, and then I'll ask to share with the class. Now, one little tip to help you share with the class is I could say, okay, whoever's oldest, you share with the class. I'm going to come around. I'll give him 30 seconds to figure that out. And then I'm going to come around and say, out of you two, who's sharing? Good. Tom, will you read what you wrote? Out of you two. Okay, Sally, would you be willing to share what you wrote? And usually at that point, they're, pretty willing to share. You might want to give them a heads up ahead of time. You're going to be sharing these, so that's something that you want to keep in mind as you're writing. And then the last thing I do is circle the ones you felt in class today. I put all of these, I put the words here that are found in the scripture block. So the words that are found in the scripture block, I put some of them down at the bottom. And I said, okay, which ones did you feel in class? And okay, share with your neighbor. And then let's get a few people to share with the class. And I say, there is none down here. If you don't feel like you felt any, then I'm not trying to force you to put one. If the answer is none, feel free to write none. But what I like to do is, okay, you felt edified or built up. Can you tell me how you felt that in class? You felt like you were made stronger. Can you tell me how you felt that in class today? And this is something that I like to use the next few days, is just put this on the bottom of my study page so that I can refer to this at the end of the class. Did you feel any of those? That's evidence the Spirit was here today. So this has been a longer video. I want to thank you for joining me and really encourage you to set up some boundaries. And maybe you don't want to do it the way I do, but I want you to think about how are you going to do it? How are you going to set up boundaries, right? What are your boundaries going to look like? What are they going to be? Things like going to the bathroom. Do we want to be interrupted every day for the rest of the semester with somebody raising their hand at the wrong moment and saying, can I go to the bathroom? Do we want people just leaving their seat, creating distractions? Do we want people having, video games and devices at their table? Do we want people doing homework at their desk? Do we want people reading Harry Potter in the middle of your lesson? Do we want people doing homework in class? The clear answer for me is no. if we can set these boundaries up from the very beginning, we eliminate so many problems. And I encourage you to set up boundaries. The temple has boundaries. Our chapel has boundaries. God has boundaries. And for our classes, we need healthy boundaries. Taking this journey is so hard. But I believe if you set boundaries early, that it will help you to succeed. If you've been teaching for a semester and you have the same classes and you know your boundaries have been just destroyed, feel free to start off the new year with healthy boundaries. Just say it like this: I've been thinking, and we're going to set some boundaries so that we can have more effective and more success in our class. And go for it. There might be some complaining and some pushback, but better to do the work on day 1 or day 2 than to constantly be dealing with these things for the next 4 months. Thanks for joining me, and thanks for being heroic.